Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking time out at your busy lunch times. We have got 60 people signed up today, and at the moment, people are dripping in slowly but surely. So please, can one of you who has joined just confirm by a thumbs up that you can hear me and that you can see the slide. That's great. Great stuff. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of housekeeping, but then we'll get straight into the episode because we've got a great guest speaker today and we're looking forward to spending time listening to Michael's story. So in regards to the housekeeping, just for everyone's interest, this episode is being recorded. And we're recording this because hopefully the ISPE and the Chartered Institute of Building will retain this recording, so we can obviously share that with anybody who's expresses an interest in either catching up with it if they've missed this event, or again if anyone of you on the call would like to sort of refresh yourselves again, it should be retained. So yeah, this is being recorded, and I want to thank you again for all your time today. So, without further ado, I'm Lee Renshaw. I am the chair of the CIOB Manchester Hub, and this is a joint venture between the CIOB and the ISPE network. Now, this is episode 4, I can't believe, of a 5-part series. So it's all about attracting underrepresented talent and, aligning our different businesses under our EDI principles and just a general knowledge share really, because obviously it'll help our commitments to CPD and get our CPD hours into our IDPs, etc. etc. So from the CIOB perspective, we're a massive global community, over 50,000 strong members, and our professional plan really is to sort of enhance modern professionalism in our sector. So we look at plugging the skills gap, which is part of the initiative for today. You can see the bottom left of the slide. We look to strengthen and retain our talent pool across the industry, and we do recognise that in the built environment, in the life sciences and STEM sectors, construction sector, but diverse talent, diverse thinking is instrumental to driving us forward and all delivering to the best of our abilities. So that's the CIOB slide. Next slide, please. Now, our partner organisation, the ISPE, we've got apologies from a lot of them today because they've got actually a big session kicking off down in London, and a lot of the key stakeholders are down there today. But again, they're a truly global organisation. They've got 21,000 members. So, together we've got over 775,000 professionals in the construction and life sciences environment. And again, they are looking to shape the future of pharmaceutical sectors and the life sciences one. They're a non-profit organisation, and again, they're a very diverse pool of individuals, which are bigger than the sum of their parts. They are a very amazing network, and we all recognise that diversity and neurodivergence will be a key component of the ISPE as well as the CIOB. So that's why we've come together to create this webinar. And again, hopefully, this is a start of a future partnership for years to come, really. Next slide, please. Well, we've got a CIOB corporate plan, and again, we're not preaching to the converted here. We do recognise that there's a massive skills shortage, particularly as we grow from strength to strength, and demand and investments in the built environment and the life sciences sectors are coming through. Big pipeline continuously, and we need to really set ourselves up for success by making sure we've got the right athletes and right people to fulfill those requirements. So we have got a huge shortage in that space. Next slide. Closer to home, 250,000 construction workers just to satisfy our current demand. You think about that on a global scale, we're into the millions. probably tens of millions of people to satisfy demand across the construction and life sciences sector globally. Next slide. To do that, we've already said, you know, diversity within ethnicities, backgrounds, etc., is huge. We definitely need to, in the construction arena, we need to definitely attract more talent across that space. But similarly, in the diversity of brains, diversity of thinking and logic, I would say that's a similar ask. And again, I would say that there's a huge amount of people in our sector already who are neurodivergent. And we need to attract more talent from underrepresented sectors to continue to grow, and for all of us to perform to the best businesses and organisations' abilities. Next slide. There was an amazing report done by the National Federation of Builders. Now, I don't know if you've seen it. I do suggest you Google it. 1 in 4 construction workers consider themselves to be neurodivergent. Yeah. So if you think about ISPE perspective in the STEM area and in the life sciences, I should imagine that's got very similar parallels. So at least 1/4 of our members in the CILB and 1/4 of the ISPE members are either known neurodivergent or undiagnosed neurodivergent. So we need to keep our team working to the best of their current abilities by giving them the best environments to shine, and Michael will touch on that in his presentation. But similarly, that untapped potential and them amazing people who haven't joined us in construction or the life sciences sector, we're like a moth to a flame. We will attract them if we do it the right way, but we want to sustain and maintain that pipeline of talent. Next slide. Again, that just further demonstrates that the industry that we're all in, you know, construction, pharmaceuticals, residential, new build, you know, anywhere we're implementing change and we're exciting projects and initiatives, being neurodivergent is, it draws people in, it draws that population in. So again, we obviously deliver with that neurodivergent skill set, but again, if we can create this sort of snowball of more talent coming in, developing it, will only increase that cadence and that initiative and that motivation to be better. So it's again, it sustains the pipeline. Next slide. Right, so hopefully some of you have listened to the previous 3 sessions. This is session 4 or episode 4 of a 5-part series. Today, we're really drilling down into dyslexia, the lived experience of dyslexia, but also how amazing people with dyslexia can create amazing new buildings, new organisations, new medicines, for example. So again, we want you to take away that thinking really that, you know, the old preconceived notion of what dyslexia was, when we challenge that and we start really appreciating what dyslexia is, the outputs of that, if we enable that environment to create that growth and that mindset, is just unfathomable really. It's incredible what we can generate as a collective. Next slide. So that's the front end of the bookend slides for me. Hopefully you've got an overview of CIB, ISPE and why we're doing this. It gives me great pleasure in a minute to hand over to Michael, who's on the call. Now, Michael's the Director of Design for the Austin Company. And again, Michael is dyslexic, but he's an architect, and you'll hear an amazing story of his career to date, but also the psychological side of design, and making designing isn't a one size fits all. You know, it's not all square pegs into square holes, it's all round pegs into round holes. We're all different by brains and diversity, so we really shouldn't think that we should design our buildings and our environments to suit one size fits all. We're going to challenge that norm, that thinking. We need to make sure we provide diverse amenity for everybody. So I'm going to hand over to Michael now to provide his presentation Any queries in the chat, please email me if you're having problems, and we'll do a Q&A at the end of the session. That's enough for me. Over to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. I really appreciate that. Okay, so as Lee said, I'm Michael Blake, and I'll be presenting this fourth session with you guys. It's been a long time in the making. I've kind of cobbled together a presentation from a few other presentations that I have, so bear with me if I get stuck on anything, but I'll crack on. So I was born in 1975. I had a fairly normal school upbringing, infant school through GCSEs and A-levels. I followed on with a foundation in art after my A-levels, and I did a bachelor's in art at North London, architecture in North London, and then I went on to study at Cardiff and Chester as well. A year after my final graduation, I was made principal architect. And then after that, I sort of started chasing down more and more onerous titles within the company. That was born mainly out of a healthy disregard for authority, but the best way to make a change is from the inside, and I've been working on that for about half of my life so far. I've worked and lived all over the UK as well as abroad, mainly sub-Saharan Africa. That was Mozambique, Botswana, South Africa, that sort of corner of the world. And today I work out of Croxley, which is close to Watford, in the Golden Triangle between Oxford, Cambridge and London, which suits my company very well. We also have an office in Stockport. However, this little red line, I don't know if you can see it on your screens, is when I was diagnosed as dyslexic. I was 8 years old, 1983. Not a lot was known about it. It was fairly disregarded as a label for just being stupid. And these little dots that turn up on the line are the number of times I was retested. I assume just to make sure I hadn't cured myself at some point along the line, but it was mainly so that any school or university might give me some assistance during my exams. I was lucky though. There was no standard test for dyslexia when I was being tested the first time around, and I just happened to be going to a secondary school where there was a teacher who was working on the system of assessment. So Dilys Smith later became my form tutor at secondary school, and without her kind advice and help, I would have given up a long time ago. So here are a few of the images of my work in the UK, the bits I can share anyway. Strangely, a lot of my work is restricted, MOD, nuclear, and now commercially NDA'd. I've worked in many sectors of architecture, from residential and commercial, education and research and development, until I found my niche, which is highly technical buildings with a purpose, preferably for people who are going to use them. That's something I enjoy a lot. They're usually quite odd, I would say strange, beautiful. They're definitely functional, which is where I found myself now. And I've been the director of design for the Austin company for 5 years, working mainly on pharmaceutical, aerospace and manufacturing facilities. So the Austin company is a multidisciplinary international company. We're probably more interdisciplinary because at Austin, it's joined up thinking between the different disciplines of engineering and architecture, and we work very well together. Our focus in the UK is mainly scientific research and manufacturing facilities with a strong focus on pharmaceutical. We also work in the aerospace, food industries, automotive, defence, manufacturing sectors. Anything that's highly technical as a building, that's where we really find our forte. The company's been around for just under 150 years, 85 in the UK, so not too bad, not too shabby. Interestingly, recently, for something else I was doing, I had to dig out how many AstraZeneca projects that we've undertaken over the years. And if we count back to the ICI stuff in 1986 and the Zeneca in the 90s, it tots up to about 140 projects. And that's just for one client. So we've been around for a while. We've covered a lot of ground. I personally work on the front end of design. I ascertain the client's requirements for the project, look for solutions that resolve the requirements. I look at the politics I look at the project costing envelopes. I look at the technical solutions, basically everything before the wider team starts to look at developing up the documentation for construction. So it's really plucking the ideas from the client, trying to ascertain what their end goal is, usually over multiple groups, and then bring it together as one cohesive idea at concept stage. As a company, Austin is constantly looking for ways to improve the built environment for all users. And it's especially important for us when it comes to delivering projects for people who are far more cleverer and do better things than us. So when it comes to those environments, performance doesn't just stop at how it looks. The front-end design considerations are usually function first, building performance, and that goes beyond the technical requirements of the lab or the process space that we're designing for. It can't just look the business, it must be the business, hence the slide. All those things on the right-hand side are part of synesthetic or multi-sensory design. And I like to think that that Austin we design extra into buildings, just to make them special, mainly for non-neurotypicals, but it's always for the benefit of everybody. And so that's what this presentation is about. It's about design for neurodiversity. So neurodiversity, it's really prominent in the media at the moment. Some of this is pick up on the coverage that relates to the growing interest in people's mental health, and there are differences between mental health generally and neurodiversity. It also, in turn, some of it stems from our experience of working in alternative environments during COVID. Some of it, sorry, I've skipped ahead. Some of it comes from forums like this, where we're educating to inform, possibly to desensitize some people, and sometimes to embolden others to come forward. Over the 2020 lockdowns, if you remember, people became more comfortable to talk about the human condition. Now a lot of people are becoming more comfortable talking about their diversity, which I think personally is great. I've always done it. It's a bit hard to hide my diversity. I did when I was little. For others, I understand it's harder. More people have been able to talk about their own personal challenges recently, and the recent experiences have enabled others to empathize with those who had maybe been hiding on the fringes of being different for a long time. It's interesting that some of us, even at my age, are also finding out that they're neurodivergent as well. So really, what does neurodivergent mean? Well, neurodiversity is very simply nervous system variety. It's like having a different operating system. It's maybe just alternative thinking. But basically, no two brains are the same. Like our eyes, like our hair color, like our facial features, height, fingerprints, we're just different from each other. So let's have a look at some of those differences. There are three categories. This is the first of the category slide. Standard, which is neurotypical. Good luck defining what standard means. Neurodivergent, non-standard, obviously, from neurotypical. And then neurodegenerative, which is changing, which usually just refers to cognitive decline, sadly. However, a lot of the work that I'm doing now comes from studies that were based around care homes looking at how to care for people with neurodegenerative conditions. So what variations are there? So there's a huge range of labels given to different neurological differences. This is a simplified illustration of a spectrum. It's not a 1 to 10 spectrum of quiet to loud or simple to complex. It's just one to the other, just that some some are similar and some are different, and there is a range. The list on the right-hand side is more prevalent labels. I've made some suggested edits for later, perhaps. it doesn't show any weighting of the population. There's no percentage or variations in the diagnosis, just a list, and it's not complete. It's just that there's a difference. Now, within that spectrum, there are a huge range of differences within each neurological profile. Behavioural variation can also read as personal affliction, depending on your relationship to other types of diversity. There are also people who have more than one profile, suggesting that there are even more subtle nuances to be discovered or categorized for convenience. Remember, these are labels to help people identify, not necessarily to understand, and that's why I'm not particularly happy about the titles on the right-hand side. So, like the people on the right, I'm dyslexic. So what does that mean? Simply, I think differently. I think a lot faster than most people. I process information a lot faster, approximately 75,000 words a minute, if it was possible to calculate. I'll explain how that works in a second. I recognize patterns and I create solutions very rapidly. I have an ability to see every situation, opportunity and problem with a unique perspective, possibly multiple perspectives simultaneously. A dyslexic most probably will find solutions that a lot of other people can't. This is because most people don't think the way that we think. But I can test multiple solutions simultaneously, complex problem solving, pattern recognition, and I'm doing it all of the time. I'm doing it right now. I don't know that I'm doing it. It's just the way that my brain works. Because of this, sometimes I spell badly, and I'm a little slow at reading compared to other people. This is the bit that people most commonly associate with being dyslexic. Approximately 1 in 5 people globally are dyslexic, which should make some of my neurotypical friends feel a little outnumbered. We tend to have seemingly high IQs. That's because our brains are quite well adapted to IQ tests rather than the other way around. But it may be possible that we can't recite the alphabet. I might use the wrong word when speaking. I can suffer from shortened attention spans on things that I find difficult or boring. I may have sporadic stutters, which does happen, and I was definitely a very late speaker. When I was a child, I think I was about 5 or 6 before I learned to speak. However, I have been making up for it ever since. My colleagues and my family will testify to this. So I'm just going to give you a quick trigger warning because I'm going to show you a slide. And if you were around at the first presentation of this series, you'll have seen this a little bit before. But it can make people feel a little sick. So I just let you know. This image on the left-hand side is why I say I find it hard to learn. I find it hard to read. This is what text can look like to a dyslexic. So imagine having to learn to read when every page looks like this, from Spot the Dog to the latest novel. It's a very close representation, and hopefully you can begin to understand where misspelling or short attention spans come from. But really, to stop and think how hard it is for maybe a 6-year-old to copy things from a board as the teacher is or was speaking. I'm happy to share this slide with people, or this particular GIF, because I think sometimes it's quite good to try and read what that text says. It's not easy, and a lot of people give up, which is pretty much how most dyslexics will react when they're trying to read text. You can also understand why it's quite hard to learn things from reading as a dyslexic. So it's first thought that the documentation of dyslexia starts in 1880s by a German neurologist who was interested in adults who had normal seeming intelligence but who had challenges with reading. It's basically caused by a pair of synapses that are just a little bit further apart from each other in the brain and only in one location of the brain. So instead of using this broken or further apart pair of synapses, I process written text through the centers of my brain usually used for image recognition and sound analysis. I've bypassed the rubbish bit of my brain to use an alternative bit. I've rerouted my brain, a rewiring, as you would. Over the years of learning and having to fit in with the way that people are taught, that bit of my brain has got stronger because I have used it for other things. And now that part of my brain is very agile, and I process thought in image and not words. So that bit about claiming to be 75,000 words a minute, let's have a look at and see what that is in context. So, like I say, I think in images, well, 3D shapes, to be honest. Most people think in words. Don't ask me to describe how that works, as I've never experienced it. Or apparently the comprehension speed is around 300 to 400 words a minute. The dyslexic mind will generate an image or a shape or a form at around 1 every 13 hundredths of a second. So I can take an image and manipulate it, rotate it, morph it into something else, zoom in, zoom out, fix a part of it in time, and then carry on with the rest of the it until I'm happy with it. I do this with everything, not just the idea of an object or a form, but also the idea of or a context, let's say. I give it size, which is relative, from form, texture, movement, tone, pattern, grain. An amorphous blob might represent the idea of a management strategy, for instance. Parts resolve as the concept strengthens. Other parts remain elastic as I look to resolve or adjust it to make part of it steady as part of the whole, which now I say it out loud sounds absolutely mental, but it's quite apt for a management strategy, let's say. I'm doing this with a soundtrack of statements as well as an inner monologue. The image I can go back to many weeks, days later. The monologue is just a memory of the idea when I return to it, and meaning that the audio elements can degrade over time. But the visual element will always stay, and I can go back to those ideas. They are lodged in my memory. So I can test options as well to see if they fit. I can run multiple options simultaneously. So complex problems can run side by side. I'll be doing this while you speak to me, and I may arrive at a destination before you get there. I have learned to be patient. I've learned to have a poker face, and I've learned very much not to interrupt. It actually gets much more complex than this, and I don't do it justice with the images that I'm showing you on the screen. It's just an illustration because it's quite a complicated thing to try and explain. But if you think this sounds very odd, you're right, it is. If you think it's normal and nothing worth fussing about, you're probably not as neurotypical as you think. So what are my traits? The bits that people see and the bits that people don't see. I spell very poorly because the bit of word recognition in my brain is slower than my thought process. I can trip over words occasionally or struggle to express myself properly because I'm image processing and talking at the same time, and they're both fighting to use the same bit of my brain. I can suffer false memories if my visualization process is too intense or I'm studying a form for too long in my mind. This is both exhausting and unnerving in equal measures and can cause high levels of anxiety. I won't go into it too much here, but if anybody is dyslexic and they have experienced this and don't understand it, then I'm happy to talk to them about it. When I visualize for design problem solving, which is very much part of my job, and when I'm doing complex things over a long period of time, I notice that I can be easily distracted. This is generally related to fatigue, I think, for me. My short-term memory is also poor because my brain is doing extra work to process the information that a normal or standard brain will do very easily, especially if I'm trying to communicate while I'm image processing. And again, my short-term memory is also poor. Little joke. So where do I fit in? Let's have a look at neurodiversity inclusion in the workplace, because that's really where I take my experience and I apply it to my job. So 12 million people are tested to be neurodiverse. This figure does not include self-diagnosis. Some people may be covert and others overt, like myself. My tell is my poor spelling. It's not particularly easy to hide. It doesn't make me a bad architect. In fact, my rational, fast problem-solving brain makes me a really good architect, and there are companies which search out dyslexics as architects. If you're a left-handed architect, for some reason, you are excellent at being an architect. I have noticed as well that it has become a skill on LinkedIn, dyslexic thinking, and people are utilizing the dyslexic problem-solving brain in many different areas of the world. I try and use my position to make conversation around neurodiversity a rational one. My goal is to design working environments that, through the betterment of all, benefit those who need the support the most. It's basically, I'm designing for neurodivergence, but I'm doing it under the guise that everybody benefits from what I do. I work with and for some of the best engineers and scientists in the world. I'm very, very privileged. There are areas of research and work that draw neurodivergent types too. So you'll find a lot of us in science and engineering, funnily enough. It seems only fair that we take that skill set and we create spaces for people that benefit from other scientists' work, which is why I'm in this particular field. Especially when they go on to do things which I couldn't, and are for the betterment of absolutely everybody. So the National Autistic Society put a presentation together a little while ago. It was based on a lot of research that they'd ascertained. These are two statements that I'm quite interested in. 45% of neurodivergent people have lost or left their job because of challenges due to being misunderstood. Today, only 1 in 16 autistic adults are in full-time employment, which is really heartbreaking for me. And this is from Fox and Partners, who've also been looking at neurodivergence, that a rise in unemployment, employment tribunals citing neurodiversity discrimination has seen an increase from 70 in 2020 to 93 in 2021, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing their data on this. So this is the bit about my job that I do, and I try to explain this as quickly as possible. This is from a much longer presentation, so I will not try and bore you too much. It's not easy to design for neurodiversity. The reason being that if everyone is different, how do you make a space that suits everybody? When your requirements conflict with each other, how do you make a one-size-fits-all model? Well, you can't, and it's simple as that. One size does not fit all. You might need people, design spaces who are for people who are quiet as well as loud people. You might need bright spaces, you might need dark spaces, you might need stimulating spaces or understimulating spaces. It's very, very complicated. So these are some of the factors that I've worked to include in my designs. Low stimulation spaces do not mean boring. Social spaces do not mean loud spaces. Quiet spaces within the wider context of an office are helpful, but they can't be tucked away. You're not trying to isolate people. Alternative routes don't have to take up extra space. Creative variation in the grain or the layout helps facilitate different types of environment for working in. And this allows people the space to be good at their jobs. That's really the fundamental of it. So to do this it's not obvious to the casual observer that I'm doing it, and that's the trick. That's the bit where I'm hiding everything behind a sort of screen of nice design. The other trick is to do this for the benefit of everybody. So the 4 diamonds in the bottom right-hand corner of community, collaboration, communication, and concentration are the pillars of the design. And for different results, more emphasis is placed on one or more of those pillars. Not for every client, I won't tell them that I'm doing this. Some people ask me to, and I walk them through the process. Other people don't ask, but I do it anyway. Then wait a couple of years for people to say how much they like the space. So general design, where there are no one element that outdoes another. So designing an inclusive space for everybody is a distraction-free workspace that that don't have to be boring. It just means that they're lower stimulation. So that might mean tonally or texturally more relaxed. I might go to more neutral tones. I might look at more neutral materials. Stimulating spaces don't mean bright or loud. I often introduce more domestic elements into community areas to mark a difference between the working space and the peripheral activities. I'm quite proud of these spaces, and it's one of these areas, one of the areas where I get the greatest amount of feedback. Often people like those breakout spaces, and they feel very relaxed and they feel really recharged to go back to their working areas, wherever that might be. Meeting zones are a key to an area and getting people to want to work together in the office rather than at home. So this is very interesting recently with a lot of clients asking me to bring people back into the office. It's a post-COVID trend of collaborative forces being online rather than being in one space. It's not necessarily great if you're a creative group. Open plan offices are great. You often need spaces for louder conversations, mobile phone calls, team calls away from those common working areas. Spaces for introverts. There's more emphasis is placed on the design for concentration spaces, especially in labs and office areas. Opportunities to work away from other people, but not permanent spaces. So you're invited to work somewhere, then return back to a normal space or the space which is more communicatively driven. Activity spaces have moments of pause or respite before accessing them, allowing the opportunity for people to prepare themselves or at least be aware of the space they're about to walk into. It sounds a little OTT, but it's a simple design element that can have a profound effect on a lot of people using the space. If I designed a space for you and you tried it, you would definitely want it everywhere. It's also a great way of signposting when you're about to walk from one loud space into a quiet space or vice versa. I also look at increasing the number of options for circulation, which give people choice to take different routes through the office, depending on how they feel about a loud area or not a loud area, whether they want to communicate with people or not. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to take up more space. I just have to create different routes for people. These are really popular. So neurotypicals, the norms, they're a good balance of collaboration and communication spaces, multi-purpose areas that don't have to be defined, they don't have to have defined requirements to them. Less privacy is required. I don't think I've designed a truly neurotip office for the last 15 years. I add elements in, but it's not really needed. Then again, I don't think anyone has asked me specifically to design an office for neurotypicals, so it would be hard to say that I have or I would. Neurotypical and extroverted. So this is quite a common classification, especially in construction industry. Creating a lot of collaborative spaces for varying sizes, for multiple options, for different group sizes, for different presentation styles, etc. Often multi-function, so soft seating areas for prolonged discussions away from the desk, or meeting areas away from the sort of work desks, socially focused workspaces. The basis of most designs is blending all of these ideas together in a clever way which suit the assessment I've made of the people who are working there currently and the likelihood of people to work there in the future. So I just need to run through quite quickly. I'm sorry, Lee, if I'm starting to overrun, but I don't know what the clock says. So I look at a few other things that I consider when designing or remodeling a space in a building. Often I wouldn't work through these following elements with a client unless they asked me to, but I still do it as part of the project. Again, just don't tell anybody. So movement, this is physical movement and creation of cues for alternative movement. There's also creation of respite and visual connection to spaces so that they can be assessed before entering. There's signaling changes of environment. So we do that through form, shape, maybe the repetition of a detail so that people are aware that they're about to walk around the corner into a different type of environment. Signage, this is really important. There are so many neurodiverse types which have difficulty with reading and depth perception, and so locating signage at the right height in the right font that mean the right things. I could show you a myriad of stupid bathroom logos which are difficult to work out for some people. I'm sure you've come across them. I didn't put them in the presentation because there are so many of them. The other thing I like to do with movement is I like to think about removing optical tricks, such as odd flooring or false edges. These need to be removed for visually impaired people, although there's no descriptive requirement in building regulations to do so. But they can often be very triggering. So when you have, let's say, the edge of a wood floor onto a carpet floor, how does that edge feel and look to somebody else? A lot of the time we define spaces in architecture by using different materials on the floor or on the ceiling. This doesn't always help, and we really have to be very careful about how that image is thought of. I spend a lot of time mentally walking through spaces that I'm designing just so that I can look at how that might be perceived. So texture. This is touch texture as well as visual texture. It's also the rhythm of a layout, which is linked to movement often. It's often called the grain of a layout. It's the succession of spaces, the order of spaces, and the expectation to find spaces in the logical locations. Like going up to a staircase, if you're going up clockwise, 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 and then you have to turn left at the top, you often feel slightly unbalanced. It's a natural thing, and I have to think about how those spaces play together, how we can use movement and texture to signal different areas or just encourage different behavioral patterns. Surface textures are very interesting. They are, I think we heard last week about stimming, about touching things which are interesting looking. And now that's fine. That's really good. We spend a lot of money on the materials that we come into contact with. It's the best place to spend money for any project. But if that material is a false material, let's say it's an image of timber applied to a substrate, and you are touching what you think to be timber finish, textured finish, and it's not, it's smooth, that can be quite jarring. And I spend a lot of my time thinking about how those surface finishes work together as texture. Sometimes it's just about removing high shine areas. That can be light effective, that can be disorientating as well. That can create tricks in visual cues as well. The next element is acoustics. So high frequency reverberation often leads to the development of community volume gain. So having spaces which vary in acoustic resonance can give people control within their environment, finding a space to recover from over or under stimulating areas. When that high frequency builds up in a large area, people lift their voices up to compensate for what they perceive to be a high volume. And that just generates greater and greater volume in the area. By creating variation, we can also provide safe and preferred zones of working within areas that are like that. It's natural for the office to get louder, for the site cabin to get louder. But by adding in acoustic treatments and creating different spaces, we can invoke different behavioral patterns. When you walk into a large old museum, you will naturally go through a lobby space, and that's there as part of the architecture, but it also changes the reverberation from being outside on the street, which is loud and noisy. You're coming into what you want people to act as a quiet space. So you change the reverberation rates within a space. It tends to quiet people down because you're in a small space, high volume, and people start reacting to that. And then you walk into the museum all quiet and calm. It's a very handy trick, and I use it in office spaces as well. The other thing we also like to do is cueing of acoustic change, and this can help people who need to know that these spaces are close by, that they are triggering. or they're high anxiety areas. Approach with caution, basically, is what I'm trying to do. And we can turn that around within the acoustics of the building. The other thing we actually do is actual mapping of these areas in a way that makes it easy to understand for visitors. And I mean a physical map in your hand. So if I gave you a layout of a building of how to get somewhere, it might have a logo on it telling you that this is an area of high acoustic resonance, or this is a loud area, or this is a particularly quiet area. It's very interesting to do that, and the feedback I get from people occasionally is amazing. That thank you very much, this was really good. You can also do it for smells. One of the key elements in really good design for neurodiversity is nature, biophilic design, and it's been a really good way of creating visually sympathetic and beneficial spaces for everybody. Use of natural materials, natural form, and introduction of plants into a space is known to create a very calming environment. In fact, it's how we got rid of sick building syndrome. Take that further and you can look at spatial design that mimics nature, creating clearings in a forest, as it were, or natural pathways, layered views. That's also very good. And the look at natural light and the way that light changes throughout the day. That has a really good effect on people, especially when they body clock in time. Brings me on to light. As I've just said, natural light allows a slow shifting variation in the internal space, which links back to nature, but also a good way of body clocking the day when hyper-focused tasks are at hand. Task lighting can also allow the control of your immediate environment, which is very relaxing for a lot of people. Strip lighting is not only incredibly energy inefficient, but it flickers, which is barely perceptible to most people, but can be incredibly triggering to other people. Cold LED lights can also have a flicker when they first switch on. So LED lights on a motion sensor can be very distracting for some people. However, they cycle much quicker than cold cathode ray tubes did. So the flickering effect is less perceptive for a lot of people. The other key element in lighting is temperature range. So warm to cold or yellow to blue can be used in different space types. Expected behavior patterns, or it can signal the change in environment. Possibly social spaces defined by warmer tones of lighting and task spaces with cooler lighting, or mixes of the both. Maybe high up you've got a bright light that mimics natural daylight, but actually you have a yellower light as a task light. Personally, I find that quite jarring, and I like all the light colors to be the same. But I can understand where the benefit comes from other people and how it affects people's sensitivity to an area, a location. Aroma. So this one's really hard to design for because everyone likes different smells, but we can usually agree that there are some smells which we find quite objectionable. Architects have used aroma in a lot of spaces. I mean, if you go to York Viking Centre, it's a massive part of the design of the building. If you go to Waitrose, aisles 1 to 4, you'll move from sea salt through bakery into beach wood, which is very interesting. So go and wander around Waitrose with your nose open. That's a very interesting one. Mainly, we're looking to remove VOCs, volatile organic compounds. We do that anyway through the design of buildings, use of materials, environmental design pushes us in that direction, but removing highly synthetic smells and things like that, not just covering them up. It's a very interesting way of doing it. Again, mapping of smells is really important, and we often push that for people. And so the last bit is posture. So how we occupy a space for long periods of time is also really important. My children tend to lay on the floor to read or undertake long projects. I'm not suggesting we all lie on the floor at work, but people like to feel comfortable when they're doing concentraty things. We have to adhere to correct desk assessments, but these spaces can be varied. They can be flexible, they can be more comfortable. Remember, one size doesn't fit all, so we can create a lot of spaces which allow you to sit or work in different ways. one of the interesting bits is sit-stand desks have become very popular. Now that's really good for your circulation and posture, but it also helps your concentration, which is really good. And a lot of people on the spectrum like to be able to move when they're doing things or get into a very comfortable position while they hyper-focus. You also need to be able to move around. Look, if you add acoustic and light treatments, you can make a wide varied jungle of workspaces. A far cry from the repetition of office cubicles or rows of desks that we tend to see currently. If you get the layout right, the number and location of meeting rooms, the social spaces, the circulation cores, the natural forms, the wayfinding, the balanced public and private spaces, signposting and acoustics, then sprinkle over the dust of correct materials, check that it looks good, and you'll be getting close to a good solution. So remember, this is all subjective as well. So everyone will have their opinion about whether I've done a good job or not. But now you're getting the idea of what we do and some of the ideas of what items may be triggering and what items we try and design into a space to make them more acceptable to everybody. That's it. So I'm very much open to questions. I think I might have done all right for time. I hope I didn't rush it too much.
You did very well with the timing. I've got to say, from a presentation perspective, we can tell you're a designer and an architect because the slides look very professional. I've got we've got a couple of questions in the chat, but I just want to make two observations really. One's just to get people's thoughts going really. We're back at earlier on in the deck, how you'd obviously been through the tribulation of getting retested for dyslexia at school.
Yeah.
You had that sliding door moment where you found a teacher or mentor who helped support you through that journey. And I think that person has put you on a good footing in your career to date. Now, that harked back to some of the earlier episodes, particularly with Paul and his ADHD journey, finding, that person who realised how to play to your strengths and sort of develop your skills, but also, be appreciative of some things that you found quite difficult. So I think if anyone could take away today, whether you're a leader or a line manager or a parent, please make sure that, anyone who you think may be neurodivergent or is going through that neurodivergent journey, let's help them play to the best of their abilities and the best strengths. Because yourself, Michael, me, Paul on the earlier one, also, going back into Tim and his autistic journey, we all identified key sliding door moments with mentors. As professionals and leaders in our sector, we really need to keep banging that drum, because that's how we help people grow. And we're not talking about, people in the prison sector, for example, or are really struggling in the mental health space. So I really thought that was a real thought-provoking sliding door moment.
Can I just say something? I'll just say something to that, which is that since I've been talking about being dyslexic and designing for neurodiversity, I have been really lucky to be other people's sliding door moment.
Yeah.
And it is why I carry on talking about it, because 4 or 5 people, they might help 10 or 12 people themselves. Eventually it will just start spreading, and it's really, really, really good, because a lot of parents who have children who might be dyslexic like myself worry that they don't know what to do. I just want to point them in the right direction and get the help that they can, the best help they can possibly get.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're an advocate in this space. Hopefully these sessions are a catalyst to sort of develop that. I don't want to, and again, my only other observation before getting to the quick questions is, your customers don't realise that they're getting that inclusive design as part of them offerings because you've got that lived experience. I think you could sell and market it that it's an inclusive design for neurodivergence, but even if they just want you to satisfy a design brief, your lived experience is giving benefits to everybody that they may not know. And I just wanted to sort of thank you for that as well.
I'm still doing it, and it doesn't matter what project I do. I'm just crowbarring a bit in here and a bit in there, and I'll just sit back and wait. The next project I do, someone will turn around and say, "Oh, that kitchen space that you designed, that's really good. Everyone loves that. Can we do that?" It's a pat on the back. I love it.
Question from Ben. Do you have
Yeah.
any recommendations for activities such as meeting minutes writing or report writing? As someone with dyslexia, these simple tasks are taxing and time consuming.
Yeah, I don't. There are a lot of things out there. Word, they're building in, Microsoft are building a lot of their AI functionality into things like Word. You can talk notes, you can dictate to notes. That is actually getting a lot better, but it's one thing that I also struggle with a lot. And if you look at my notepad, it's an absolute mess. I think one of the best things you can do is make the best of it while you're going through the meeting and then immediately do your write-up notes before the short-term memory problems kick in and you can't read your own scribbles or you miss things out. I use a lot of highlighters to highlight things. I use a lot of, I bubble things. So if someone's talking and I've already got to a solution very rapidly and I want to talk about that, I might make a quick note, throw a balloon bubble around it, like a cloud bubble around it, so I know to come back to it later. Because by the time they've finished talking about something else, I'll have forgotten about that solution. I'll have moved on to the next problem to fix. So yeah, it's one of those things. I'm sorry, I don't have a fix for it, but I'm happy to talk if you yeah, we'll definitely find a solution. It'd be a
get your emails in the chat, because there's another question I'd like to ask from Freddie. So again, to get help support, do you need a formal diagnosis? I was tested numerous times as a child and it got ignored until in the workforce after university. So again, have you found that you had to repeat that test again and again and again? Has it had to be formally in your lived experience?
So what's interesting is that a school now will have to do a light touch assessment, and it follows some criteria. And if it ticks one or two of those boxes, they then can push you towards a formal diagnosis process, which is paid for by the school system. If that is going to take a long time, you can step outside of that and pay for an assessment. And paying for an assessment is not cheap, but is incredibly beneficial if you can do it really early on. And I understand, I have friends as well who've been late diagnosis. The cost is significant, Ben. Yeah, I really do understand that. But the help and assistance that's available for you, but actually just the information that's available for you is amazing. Now, one of the best resources is on LinkedIn with the Dyslexic Society, or Dyslexic Association, sorry. You'll know it. You'll look at it and there's a box with a series of different coloured dots on it. And there's a lot of famous people associated with promoting it. Now, the resources that they have and the avenues that you can follow with that may bring the cost down, and you may be able to find somebody locally who will assess you for free. What is really interesting is that dyslexia is inherited. So someone above you in your food chain and someone below you in your food chain is also going to be dyslexic. So getting that early diagnosis helps with understanding for you, for your ability, for your learning, but also your children. In my case, it was my father who, after being told he was stupid for a very long time and telling them to bugger off, and going off to university and becoming a doctor of chemistry and then going on to be a tutor, a mentor, he found out when he was in his late 40s, maybe some of us around the table are in that situation. He found out he was dyslexic and it all made sense to him. Even now, when we are finding out new things about dyslexia, like, this image thinking process, and I know that's really weird to talk about, but that is new research that's coming forward. That wasn't there 10 years ago when I was looking at this. And so there are strides being made at the moment that really help people understand what dyslexic actually means.
Perfect. We are running out of time. You answered a couple of other. No. You answered a couple of the questions in the chat there anyway. Answered the hereditary bit and stuff like that. I know we've got other slides, but basically, from the CIEOB perspective, we have support functions there should anyone want to reach out. And if you go through the chat function, you'll find my email address and Michael's. So please reach out to us after this session if you'd like recordings of last events. Please sign up for our last one, which is in a couple of weeks, in looking at people coming in the sectors from the armed forces. And again, last, I really just want to thank Michael for his time today, and we hope you all got something out of this session. So thank you very much for everybody.
Could you just let everybody know? I think my email went into the top of the chat earlier on.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to reach out direct, please do.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Michael, I will call you back. Thanks,
Okay,
now.
Joe.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.